Hey guys, it's me, Eric Newman. Welcome back to Microthesis. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you what you were interested in learning about. The purpose of this segment is for me to try and explain complex technical things in about 3 minutes or less. And one of the things that I heard over and over again was blockchain and Bitcoin. So I'm going to split those into two different things and dedicate this segment just to explaining blockchain. Now bear in mind, I'm not nearly as much of an expert at blockchain as I am with VR and AR. So if you out there are and you think that I've said something wrong, please comment down below and let me know. So that said, let's go ahead and start. I think that in order to understand blockchain, you first sort of have to understand Bittorrent. A lot of you are probably familiar with Bittorrent as it was a very popular, or it is a very popular file sharing peer-to-peer network system. Bittorrent came out largely of the legal struggles that centralized file sharing systems were running into in the early aughts. Systems like BCDC or Napster, which were being sued. They were being sued because in order for those systems to work, there needed to be a centralized server that kept the IP addresses of everybody who was sharing different files. If you were trying to download, let's say it's the early aughts, the Matrix, and you needed to get it from me off of my server, you had to find out where all the pieces of the Matrix were listed. And that information was stored in a central server that belonged to, let's say, Napster. So somebody came along and created this thing called BitTorrent. And BitTorrent is essentially a totally decentralized version of file sharing. You have a single file which can be shared around through websites or direct means. And that file itself is actually actively being updated by the BitTorrent clients that are pulling and pushing bits of little files. So you have this file, the torrent file, which actually contains the information kept up to date at some interval of where everything is. Flash forward about 10 years, and we start to see that things like Bitcoin are coming into existence. Bitcoin basically took the information and the pattern that existed inside of BitTorrent and pushed it forward. They said, let's use this same idea. Let's have a totally decentralized system where we have a file that gets moved around and kept in sync according to a special protocol. And the information in that file will describe what's called a ledger. Now, the way that this works is, you basically, every different transaction that occurs in Bitcoin gets written onto this ledger. But of course, in order for this to function, there needs to be a way for us to validate and know that if somebody says, hey, I found a Bitcoin, or hey, I spent a Bitcoin, or hey, I transferred a Bitcoin from me to this other person, we need some way to validate that information. That validation comes to us in the form of encryption, specifically public key encryption. Public key encryption is probably a good subject for its own whole video, but basically the way it works is that you have a public key and you have a private key, and by using them in combination, you can verify that you are actually the person that has produced some outcome. So the blockchain itself is really nothing more than a constantly updated file that has piles and piles of interactions, of transactions we call them, stacked one on top of the other, each one of them authenticated by a public key backed up by a private key. So this is basically a totally decentralized method of communication. And when you start to say, we're going to use the blockchain in specific ways, where I will enter in the beginning part of a computation and other people will be able to follow that up, you start to be able to see that this blockchain can be used for many things. Medical records, financial records, actual computational stuff, voting. There's really massive, massive potential in this because it doesn't require a central authority, and central authorities can be hacked. So that was it. That's my best attempt so far at trying to explain blockchain. Let me know what you think. I'm sure a lot of you out there are blockchain experts. I hope this was helpful. So until next time, I'll see you guys on the internet. Bye.